Now, the first illegal migrants that would be returned to France under the one-in, one-out deal are set to be detained within days. But critics say it'll barely scratch the surface when 25,000 people have crossed the Channel so far this year. The Home Secretary, Yvette joins us now. Good morning to you. Could you just clear up when this is coming in? I think the Home Office told us yesterday it was today, but I believe on another broadcaster you said it was actually tomorrow. Can we just clarify that quickly, first of all?
That's right. The treaty is being laid today, and the immigration rules that underpin it are being laid today. That means, in practice, they come into force tomorrow, and that means that we can start detaining people within a matter of days. And the way it will work is that when people arrive on these dangerous and illegal small boats, people can be immediately detained and then held in detention until they are returned to France. I think that's really important. And this is a groundbreaking agreement because for the last 6 years of this small boats chaos, it's not been possible to return anyone to France, even though that's where the boats started from. It is a trial programme, but it's really important we get this into force.
So a trial programme that I'm assuming you will then want to expand, particularly with the numbers, because, as you know, critics are already saying 50 out of the 25,000 already this year and the 1,000 on just the last week is the proverbial drop in the ocean and no deterrent at all.
Well, the numbers will start lower and then build, but that's the nature of this being a very new agreement. We need to trial different approaches. We need to get the processes working effectively. Sorry to interrupt you,
but just for clarity on the numbers, when you say start lower, do you mean lower than 50 and build to 50, or do you mean start at 50 and build to something more significant?
Start lower than where they will finally end up. We have not set any numbers, so
that sounds like a politician's answer. What are your hopes for where it could end up?
So, look, Kate, we've not set specific numbers, and there's two reasons for that. First of all, there isn't a fixed number, and we do want this to build, but that will depend on the process. That will depend on how we make it work in both directions. The second is that we don't think we should be giving the criminal gangs operational information in advance because they will just plan around it. If they think there are particular numbers in particular weeks, they will plan their boats around that and they will plan their advertising around it. It is a vile trade in human beings that they are running. They have no scruples and no shame, and we're not going to play into their hands. So what we'll do is we will release updates regularly on the number of people who are being detained, the number of people who are being returned, and of course the number of people being transferred to the UK who have applied through a legal process, who've applied through security checks as well. Look, no one should be making this dangerous journey. Of course, we want as many people as possible to be returned, but this is the first time this has happened. It's a really important principle because, frankly, people set off in these dangerous illegal boats from France. We should be able to return people to France.
OK, I think we're all agreed that the principle of returning people and the gangs knowing that they won't just be able to charge people a fortune to risk their life. I think we're all agreed on that. I guess it's how it works as a deterrent that people are concerned about. And not just to save the lives of those people coming over and control our borders. I wonder how concerned you are about tackling the unrest surrounding the number of asylum seekers here. We've seen protests in Kent, we've seen protests in London, we've seen protests over the weekend in other parts of northern England as well. Are you concerned about this being fuelled? And if, I'm sure you've read the front page of the Times this morning and seen the press conferences yesterday, it looks as though the Prime Minister and police are at odds over whether it's helpful in diffusing tension to release the identities of those charged with crimes, which are often the crimes that are the source of these protests and disorder breaking out. Are you agree with the Prime Minister that releasing the identities is a good thing and diffuses tension, or with the police who resist it?
Well, we do want to see more transparency and more information being provided. Let's be clear, anyone who comes to the UK for whatever reason needs to abide by UK laws, and I take any criminality immensely seriously. And in fact, we have been strengthening the law and strengthening the checks around this because it is so important. But on the information that's provided, let me give you another example of where more information was provided. When we had these very serious national security and terrorism investigations a few weekends ago, the police did release the fact that the suspects were Iranian at the point of arrest. They also, at the point of charge, the Crown Prosecution Service released the fact that those who were being charged, what their asylum and immigration status was. So we know more information can be provided. We want more information to be provided. But that does mean we need the Law Commission's review, which we asked for to be accelerated about 6 months ago and is due this autumn. That is looking at what information can be provided when there is a trial underway, because obviously you will know as a broadcaster there are always rules around information in trials. We want as much information to be provided as possible.
So the dilemma for you, let's take the example of an active case now, and you're right, I've got to be very careful not to prejudice the fairness of that trial. There's an active case in Nuneaton where 2 people have been charged with rape offences. The identity of them isn't known, and the ethnicity, or whether they're asylum seekers or residential and citizens of the UK, hasn't been revealed. And this has led to a vacuum, which has meant that other members of other parties and social media accusations have been made, which is fueling concern in the community and concern surrounding the hotel where the asylum seekers are being held. Now, Keir Starmer thinks it would be helpful to have clarity there. The police, it's their decision, don't. So whose side are you on?
So we want the greater transparency. I think the case you're talking you're talking about is the Nuneaton case. I think that's right,
yes.
Which I think it has been widely reported that this is to Afghan individuals and that they are in the asylum system. And I think that in some of that information has actually been confirmed in court now as well. But we do want more information to be provided. We do recognise that it is an operational decision for the police, Crown Prosecution Service, to decide in a live investigation when information can be revealed. But the College of Policing is already looking at the policing guidance, and we are also, the Home Office is working with the police on how that guidance needs to be changed and updated to make sure that there is proper information provided for people.
It's problematic, isn't it, though, because for want of a less clumsy expression, innocent asylum seekers that are being held in hotels, which nobody feels is the best system anyway. You know, we were discussing earlier on the programme, that can make them feel like targets.
Of course, it's important that I think there is accurate information. It's also important there are safeguards. So just as for example, 6 months ago, I announced that we would bring in a new ban on sex offenders from being in the asylum system. So they cannot be granted asylum in the UK. That's part of the border security bill that is currently being opposed by the Conservatives and by Reform. We also built in stronger checks around criminality. But of course, the majority of people from all nationalities who are in the UK don't commit crimes, but where there are crimes, and that does include the illegal entry to the UK in the first place, that does include illegal working, as well as more serious crimes. Wherever there are crimes, there has to be strong enforcement and strong protection for communities.
Another area of your huge brief is prisons, and we know that Dame Anne Overs has released a report, it was embargoed to today, saying that prisons were in days of collapse, and actually those that run prisons are constantly in emergency measures to prevent total collapse rather than actually managing the prison service. Is this something you're aware of? What are you doing to tackle it?
So I would say that the prisons is now the responsibility for the Ministry of Justice.
Of course, Shabana Mahmood, but
reforms,
order
that's right.
and is to do with you.
You're right. All of these issues are closely linked across the criminal justice system, but I think given the number of issues that the Home Office already covers, I am hugely grateful that the Ministry of Justice, as part of some reforms that were set out by John Reid, I'm hugely grateful that he did that to make sure that there can be proper action across different departments. But you're right to raise a serious issue.
Just to be clear, is that also today we have heard that the police are actively asking for still 40 people to get identity on, to be arrested and charged and investigated surrounding Southport and the riots there. And immediately that was requested, the immediate thing was, well, there's nowhere for them to go anyway. So it all interlinks, doesn't it, into having a successful prison system in identifying people that are involved in this and bringing them to justice.
You're completely right. It's all linked in across the criminal justice system. I think the problem with the prisons system is that too few prison places were built over a long period of time, and that was a deep failure, I think, by the previous Conservative government, that they neither built enough prison places nor put in place any arrangements to manage the prison population. So the reforms that Shabana Mahmood is bringing forward include building more prison places, but also having stronger arrangements, including stronger tagging arrangements, stronger requirements for penalties in the community as well, swifter penalties too, a series of different reforms to manage the prison crisis, frankly, that we inherited, because the most important thing is that where there are dangerous criminals, they can be picked up off the streets, they can be immediately put behind bars to keep the public safe. So we have to make sure that that system is working, and that includes both building and sentencing reform.
We've just been speaking about police funding, talking to Chief Constable Paul Gibson about the fact that his force is on the brink of bankruptcy and fears that he can't deliver the service that you would be asking him to do, and indeed all of us in the community would be wanting. Why is this in this mess, and at what point do you have to come in and rescue and allocate more money? I know that comes from the Treasury and the Chancellor, but it feels for him and other forces as though they're at breaking point.
So I'm sorry, I missed the interview that you obviously did with the Chief Constable, but there is a particular issue for Lincolnshire Police. Overall, we increased investment in policing by over £1 billion this year. That includes the £200 million we put into neighbourhood policing, which is why we've got nearly 3,000 additional neighbourhood police on the streets this year. That's really important, taking place across the country. There are a small number of forces that have some very particular, including historic issues. Lincolnshire is one of them. They've been, for example, in special measures with recommendations from the Inspectorate about a series of different things that need to change and be reformed. I know that the Chief Constable is working immensely hard on that, and also the Lincolnshire Police have been working with Diana Johnson, our Policing Minister, on ensuring that there is particular support for Lincolnshire. I think their funding increased by over 6% this year, so we are providing them with additional funding, but we also need to work with them on the reforms that are needed to make sure that the people of Lincolnshire can be safe.
Good to speak to you this morning. Thank you so much for your time, Home Secretary.